Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the St Clement Senatorial Hustings meeting. And I would like to welcome especially the 18 standing senatorial candidates to God's own parish. The format for this evening is the traditional format. Each candidate will speak to us for up to 3 minutes, and I stress to the candidates it's up to 3 minutes, but certainly no more. But after each candidate has made their presentation, there will be questions from the floor, which I will explain the format of that a little later. The candidates have drawn lots for their order of speaking this evening, and I would invite the first candidate to make his presentation, that's Senator Ian Gorst.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to come home to St Clement. It's been an honour for me to serve as Chief Minister for the last 3 years, and I think there can be no question that over those 3 years the island has faced a number of challenges and has not escaped the effect of the worldwide economic downturn. As head of government, I've sought to find consensus and to deliver for islanders facing up to problems and making difficult decisions. Of course, we all know that challenges remain, but I believe that by uniting as one community, we can deliver a strong future. I want my young daughters to grow up in a society which is inclusive, where there is support for those who are less well off, for those who are old, for those who are vulnerable, but also support for those who have initiative and who want to better themselves. A Jersey where we all embrace diversity and where we all feel that we have a future. That's why over the last 3 years a number of initiatives have been prioritised. We've enabled 50 families to buy new homes. We've introduced discrimination and family-friendly legislation. We started to reform the public sector. But these are only a few of our achievements. These are beginnings, but we must go further and we must go faster. With e-government and with increased support for business, innovation and enterprise. I wholeheartedly endorse the efforts of all those involved in helping 4,500 islanders into paid work through many schemes that we've set up, both government and employers working in partnership. But I believe more than ever we need to foster an environment that encourages economic growth and diversification. Of course, opportunities have been created with Digital Jersey, with the establishment of the Innovation Fund and with Jersey Business. We've set up a new structure for tourism. We've supported agriculture. But we must support the promotion of innovation in new technologies and niche areas such as fintech and Bitcoin. We must, of course, also invest in our essential infrastructure. And that's why we've invested in a new liquid waste system and started the process of delivery of the new hospital and we're transforming the way that we deliver healthcare into our community. An increased emphasis has been placed on long-term planning. Savings have been made across government, but much more can and must be done. Much has been achieved over the last 3 years, but there is much more still to do. And it would be an honour for me to be given the opportunity to utilise my experience, my motivation and my energy to continue to serve you to build a healthy and secure future for all of us. Thank you.
I invite Deputy Sean Power to address the meeting.
Good evening, St Clement. My name is Sean Power and I am still a Deputy for St Brolard. The last time I was in St Clement's Parish Hall, I had to put on a pair of marigolds and wash up for 3 hours in the kitchen because we were doing some catering for St Clement's Battle of Flowers. So my contact with St Clement is slightly different to the Chief Minister's. 11 years ago, I suppose, I first came to the attention of people when I fought to save Emerald Lines back in 2003. We lost that one, and to my regret that we did. Last year, however, I was very much involved in the post-liquidation of fuel and runoff shipping, and I was privileged to be able to bring 2 new shareholders into that company, which has now been refloated or reformed as Channel Island Lines, which continues to serve the island with lift-on, lift-off freight to and from the Channel Islands to the UK. In terms of what I've done, I'm also very strong. Today we attended a function to honour a Frenchman, Senator Jean-François Legrand, who is based in Normandy and has great contacts with Jersey. So I have the privilege to work with our contacts in France. I've worked hard, both as an assistant minister and a minister at housing. And in the last 3 years, I've also started the housing transformation that Andrew Green finished. And in the last 5 years, I've served on one of the islands, one of the state's great poison chalices, the planning applications panel. Be careful what I say in St. Clement tonight. On electoral reform, I made a submission to the Electoral Commission. That was for 30 senators and 12 constables. That was rejected by the Electoral Commission. I then supported option B, which was, as you know, bigger districts, preserving the constables again and deputies, and that was rejected by the states. So I'm here tonight supporting my wish to keep the constables in the states. Again, I'm privileged to work with 6 other colleagues on the planning panel. One of them is here tonight, Deputy Boda. It's difficult work, but I've never shied away from difficult work, and indeed, it's work that has to be done. I've got a strong track record in serving the public and indeed St. Brelad, and I'm very conscious of serving middle-income Jersey. I'm Vice President of the JSPCA, co-founder Chairing Hands, Chairman of Stepping Stones. I drive trucks to Romania for mustard seed. I'm the state's appointed member of the Community Relations Trust. So I hope in 3 minutes you've got a better idea of who I am, what I do, and it's a privilege to be here tonight. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Guy Defay.
You will see familiar faces and new faces on this platform tonight, and a raft of sitting states members, many of whom have spent the last few years trying to abolish the role of senators. You may think that's sheer opportunism that they're here now running again as senators. I call it hypocrisy. And I give you my assurance that I'm here to save our senators, and if elected, I want to make sure that our senators will not disappear into oblivion without the question being put to the voters of the island. Do you wish to retain the island-wide mandate or not? But these states members have also presided over an enormous expansion of our public service. Whilst the private sector has taken a hammering in the recession that we've all endured, businesses going bust, unemployment, pay freezes, our public services have expanded now to over 7,000 employees. Yes, you had the Rolls-Royce civil service, but like any Rolls-Royce car, you now discover that they're too expensive to run. And what is going to happen? Undoubtedly, there are going to have to be cutbacks. And I say this, if there are going to be cutbacks, we start at the top salaries and we work our way down. I want to see us cut back on hitting constantly middle-earning Jersey and lower-earning Jersey with more and more taxation to pay for the squandering of some of the state's projects we have seen over the last few years. And let's have another look, shall we, at our publicly owned utilities, which we all thought were working in favour of the island, but have discovered only recently that the instructions to them are work on maximum dividend per share. That is about making profit. So when we look at something like JT, you are not getting the cheapest phone calls and data charges that you should be getting. JT is working for maximum profit. I say it's time to end this culture. I would far rather you, the public, got cheap phone calls and cheap data charges, and we didn't end up by giving 15, 20 or whatever million as a dividend to the Treasury for the state simply to spend more money. I want to put the money back into your hands. You may not like me, you may not have liked what I've done in the past, but if you elect me, I give you this promise. I will carry out and provide solutions for you, the public. I will do it honestly. I will talk to you straight, and there will be no spinning. And I hope you will consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
I now invite Dr. Zoe Cameron to address us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a Jersey-born family doctor with a deep love of this island, its tradition and people. St Clement's has changed significantly since I used to visit my aunt here as a child. You've had an unfair share of the impact of the lack of control of the population growth. In future, food and energy resources may get scarcer, and we need to think very carefully before we rezone and build on any more greenfield sites. So why elect me as Senator? As a GP, I know that people need stability and security for their physical and mental health. And this has not been given enough importance in current state's policy, which at times in some areas seems to be change for change's sake, reduce costs at all costs, regardless of the impact of human life and the cost to other parts of the system. During this time, expenditure has actually outstripped income. Health takes the largest chunk of that budget and is destined to take even more in the next 3 years. I've decided, therefore, to step out of the consulting room and into politics so that someone with first-hand professional knowledge can help ensure that taxpayers' money is spent as wisely as possible. Over the last 2 years, I've seen that innovation is alive and well among the healthcare frontline staff. St Clement's has risen to the challenge and developed your own community support team. All too often, however, instead of investing directly in these types of solutions, money is wasted, developing ideas that come down from the top, such as a new hospital on 2 sites, that healthcare professionals fear will have a serious impact on access and patient safety. A child playing football manager knows that the type of stadium you purchase is not as important as getting the right team. Not everyone's good at scoring goals. Some surgeons are better than others. Areas that have invested in new buildings sometimes find they sit like cuckoos, swallowing resources, necessitating cuts to frontline services, and end up in financial crisis. Hospitals with the best outcomes spend money on employing competent, skilled staff, invest in training, openly admit mistakes and learn from them. I suspect schools that employ the most highly skilled teachers and allow them to find their own solutions to improve our education system and pupil achievement would also get good results. Social workers allowed time to help families instead of constantly assess them. Psychologists, time on what has happened to their clients. Business leaders and innovators could have help and support develop their ideas on how to stimulate our economy. It's an increasingly complex world,
Thank
and
you,
top-down
Dr.
solutions
Cameron.
rarely work.
I now call upon Mr. Malcolm Ferry.
Mr. Connitab, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Malcolm Ferry, and I'm standing as a candidate in these elections because I believe that the skills and abilities that I've gathered throughout my career will place me in good stead to make a difference. I'm a 49-year-old Jerseyman, married to Beverly, and we make our home in the parish of St Saviour. In my role as Chief Executive of the Jersey Citizens Advice Bureau, I have campaigned successfully on many social issues and regularly make comment to various media outlets and put pressure on policymakers to bring about real change that affects the lives of ordinary islanders. This work has taught me so much about the problems that people face on a day-to-day basis. I believe that in the past, our government has focused on personalities and personal views rather than what is in the interest of the island as a whole. My politics are centred on keeping in touch with the ordinary islander and professionalism in delivering the appropriate solutions. If you go to my website and click onto www.malcolmferry.com, you can start my campaign video. And right at the beginning, I'll ask 2 questions. What sort of Jersey do you want to live in? And what kind of future do you want for our island? Let me set out at least hopefully 2 things that I believe are big issues in this campaign. The first one is immigration. And it is, of course, important that we continue to pull out of this recession, and there will naturally be sectors that rely on workers from outside of the island. However, it does not make sense to continue to import labour whilst the unemployment figures remain so high. This is simply bad economics. We need a clear and robust immigration policy which can be properly enforced in order to define a way forward. The economy. We are hopefully seeing the end of one of the deepest, darkest recessions that this island has ever experienced. Whilst tough decisions have had to be made around fiscal policy, when we return to balanced books, the Jersey taxpayer needs to be shielded from any increases in taxes. Small businesses, in particular, need to be nurtured, and I would support any initiatives that would help new businesses that are starting up and seeking new opportunities for growth. Thank you.
I now call upon Mr. Jeff Haven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for an opportunity to talk in God's own parish, which I do not believe should be a suburb of St Helier. I spoke last night on the theme of Jersey First for anybody who was elected to the States. On the way out of Grewville Parish Hall, I was stopped by a gentleman who said, everybody said who they were and what they did. I liked what you said, but who are you? So I'll tell you. Victoria College, found myself on the way to London at 18, not voluntarily, I might point out, and told never to come back unless I qualified something. Management accountant, back here in 1976, worked at St Helier Garages for many years, last 12 as managing director. Present at the inception and the beginning and early years of Jersey European Airways, now Flybe. Been involved with building redevelopment and consulting work in Middle East, West Africa, South Africa, Europe and the UK. Now best known for Bikers and Jersey Harley-Davidson, which is the biggest internet player in its field in Europe. I've run good companies, I've rescued bankrupt companies, and it's a combination of drive, common sense and practicality. Which brings me on to local small businesses. They have had a parlous time in the last 5 years. There has been many go. The many more are now leaner, as they say, but there's still most of them struggling. We need a much lighter touch. We need to revisit population control and licensing for small businesses and the employment law. If we can give them a lighter touch, let them get on with it, they will provide a major boost to the bottom end of the economy and to the employment prospects of very, very many indeed. I'm your fresh face, and I would love to represent you. Thank you.
I invite Senator Lyndon Farnham to address us.
Making sure I can still do my jacket up. I can. It's a good sign. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lyndon Farnham. I was first elected to the States as a deputy in 1999, and I stepped down in 2005 to focus on my family and business commitments, returning to the States in 2011 when I was elected senator. I am the serving Assistant Minister at the Home Affairs Department, where I hold special responsibility for the Jersey Fire and Rescue Service and the Prison Service. And I know how proud we all are of our emergency services. But I have been especially proud to have served during a time when we have seen many improvements in many areas, including changes in our police force, leading to greater public confidence in the police. And I'm pleased to report that crime levels in Jersey continue to fall. I have successfully brought a number of propositions to the state since being re-elected, including a move to introduce political accountability for our justice system. And I now serve on the Justice Advisory Panel and the Bailiffs Consultative Panel. I am the immediate past president of the Jersey Hospitality Association and continue to champion tourism as an important pillar of our economy. I fully support the long overdue rejuvenation of Fort Regent, and I am leading a campaign for an international-sized 50-metre competition pool and associated facilities. And my appeal here is that if we're going to have a new swimming pool in Jersey, let's do it properly. I also led the campaign to keep the island-wide mandate in the office of Senator, which I'm pleased to say is alive and well, and long may it continue. If you elect me, ladies and gentlemen, I shall be seeking the position of Economic Development Minister, not least because I believe that we must now put economic prosperity firmly back at the top of the agenda, because in real terms, in 2013, our economy was at its lowest level since 1998. From agriculture and the rural economy to sports and event-led tourism, to fintech and the digital economy, to economic diversification and small business development, it's time to act. It's time to introduce the policies that will return our economy to strength, drive and energy. Now, there is still a widespread belief in the island that the states are not performing effectively. The main concerns are that some politicians are motivated more by self-interest than the interests of the island, and that some simply do not have the knowledge, skills or experience to be able to do the job. And there is a lot to do to safeguard our future prosperity, for which we need people with real experience. We need people who are sensible, able and proficient. So we must choose our representatives carefully. My politics are not about left or right, or senseless bickering or time wasting. My politics are about getting things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker is Senator Alan McLean.
Thank you and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I gave up a successful business career to seek election as deputy in 2005. Since 2008, when I was re-elected as senator, I have held the role of Minister for Economic Development during the most severe global financial crisis imaginable. I'm proud to have had the opportunity to serve my island and our community on important local issues, as well as on the international stage, where we've worked hard to build Jersey's reputation and to attract trade and inward investment. To meet the challenges of the last few years, I've overseen the transformation of the Economic Development Department, delivering efficiencies and new ways of supporting the economy more effectively and at a lower cost. We integrated the harbour and airport management teams, removing duplication and substantially reducing the costs. The complex project for the incorporation of the ports is now almost complete. Incorporation will save taxpayers up to £193 million over the next 25 years. We've supported investment in improving air routes like the introduction of EasyJet. We've created Jersey Business and Digital Jersey to support and develop the small business sector, as well as the fast-moving and exciting digital sector. We've established Locate Jersey to drive inward investment, so critical to the diversification of the economy. This year, to date, Locate Jersey have helped 33 new businesses establish themselves, creating over 310 job opportunities. Through the recession, businesses struggled to secure funding for new ideas, so we created the £5 million Innovation Fund to stimulate innovation, business growth and jobs. I've consistently championed the tourism industry, protecting its budget after years of cuts. The shadow board that I appointed recommended a new approach, and I've moved to implement that approach with Visit Jersey, simply because I want to see the industry return to growth and the benefits that many hundreds of small businesses would derive from that. We've completely restructured the beach lifeguard service against stiff opposition and appointed the RNLI. The result, a greatly improved service at a lower cost that now recruits all local lifeguards just about. We've completely redesigned and turned around a failing lottery, which last year led to the largest sum ever raised for local charities, £680,000, £250,000 than ever before. With growing lottery profits, I've recommended that other good causes like heritage and culture should also benefit from lottery funding in the future. But there's much more to do. The economy is recovering, but it's fragile. We need to boost the economy further. We need incentives and tax breaks. We need to streamline government services, remove unnecessary red tape, regulation and legislation to remove barriers. We must control the cost of government, and we must stop employing more people. We still face serious challenges. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I have the experience, and I hope you will vote for me. Thank you.
I call upon Deputy Andrew Green to address us.
Mr. Clement, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the warm welcome tonight. And I think we're seeing St Clement at its best, high tide on a warm evening. What better could you have? This evening, though, I'm hoping to convince you that I have the skills and the experience to be one of your choices for Senator. I have proudly represented St Helier as a deputy for 2 terms, a position I have enjoyed, and I've learned a lot and gained experience both in understanding government and how to get things done. I believe I have delivered both as a minister and as a backbencher. I could spend the rest of my speech explaining the different things I have done, but 3 minutes doesn't allow. But if you'd like to chat to me after or email me, I'd be happy to do that. But if I were to select just one thing, it would be the Housing Transformation Programme, transforming homes, transforming lives. Evidence of this work is right here in this lovely parish at Liscay. New homes, cheaper to run homes, homes for people, homes that are built to last. I was a governor at La Rocchia School, working hard with other governors and the head teacher to help transform the school from the one that Kathy Bull reported about to the school we have today. And as we come out of the deepest worldwide recession ever known, and we reflect, it is clear that life has been hard. Hard for many people, and still is hard. Yet we have much to be grateful for. Jersey has weathered the storm better than most jurisdictions. For example, with relatively stable house prices. We didn't have the bubble of London and the depression of Southern Ireland. Infrastructure projects have been invested in, and we were right to do that. Right to provide the much needed facilities as well as providing employment for our population. We are poised now to take advantage of the emerging recovery. And as we do so, we must seek new opportunities for economic activity. But we must also at the same time encourage and support our current industries such as finance, tourism and agriculture. Stable government is an essential part to this, and this is one of the reasons why I'm seeking an island-wide mandate. Like all Western communities, one of the biggest challenges is what is often referred to as the ageing community. This is both a challenge and an opportunity to use the skills of older folk. And what we must avoid is exclusion. We want inclusion, not exclusion. If elected as Senator, I'd like to be the next Health Minister. Courage and vision is required. I have demonstrated I have that as Housing Minister. If you want a Senator who thinks independently but works collectively, gets things done, please give me one of your votes. Go Green 14. Thank you.
I now ask Deputy John Young to address us.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 3 years ago, after seeing the Portalet development in St Bullards, how that would ruin this headland, I resolved that I would want to make sure this wouldn't happen again. And so I put up and was elected as Deputy for St Bullards, giving up as a job as a law firm manager. And since then, for the last 3 years, as a backbencher, I've worked to improve the planning system, brought successful amendments to the island plan to protect St Bernard's Bay and the Coastal National Park, and new policies for the over 55 housings throughout the island. I brought amendments to the planning law and gained approval to a new planning appeal system. And of course the island is under intense development pressure still. And in St Clement, of course, you have absorbed so much housing and increased traffic, putting pressure on the local amenities. And you probably know that in the island plan debate, I supported your Connettable's proposition against the rezoning of those 2 glasshouse sites. I brought an amendment to the planning policies to give greater protection for neighbouring properties. But of course we need our new planning minister to be strong enough to apply these policies with real vigour. Only in this way can such large new housing developments be accommodated with the minimum of problems. Time limits me today to just speak about two key subjects, health and finance. As a health service manager, I know that it's impossible for any society to fund the increase in health service as we live longer. I want to look at setting up the state's health insurance fund to help meet the costs. We need to work with GPs and voluntary bodies. I want to see a primary healthcare centre in the east where GP practices and nurses work. I want to make sure we're not copying the NHS models. I have heard many doubts too about the two-site proposals, and I was really pleased to hear to say that the backbench pressure resulted in a commitment that that is going to be subject to the state's debate. I want us to look at innovatory joint funding. Now on finances, the state's plan to spend in 2015 more than we receive and face stark structural deficits. We have a stark choice of cutting spending or increasing taxation. We must protect frontline services and workers, especially in health and education, and we need to cut corporate costs by public sector reform. These big issues require ministers to have an all-island mandate. In this election, you'll hear very impressive speeches from the current ministers. I ask you, look at their record. Ask for yourself, have they delivered joined up or inclusive government? Do they have your confidence? You have a choice of new faces or states members willing to take on ministerial roles and put up their political futures on the line. Many people ask me to stand for political office. I'm up to the challenge. I respectfully ask you for one of your 8 votes, please. Thank you for listening.
I invite Mr. David Richardson to address us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I work in the finance sector. I'm an accountant and I work in banking. With a large deficit forecast in the budget, my main overriding principle would be to promote Jersey and the other Channel Islands as healthy, robust, vibrant, forward-thinking global centres of excellence in the finance economy. I believe we should promote inter-island debates between the two assemblies in order to achieve public sector cost reductions, like law drafting or capital projects. After all, the sum of 2 is the greater than 2 working separately. In energy, I believe it's about time we promoted a Minister of Energy within the Assembly who knew everything about energy. He would promote micro-renewable energy projects and look into the long-term feasibility of Jersey investing in its own tidal energy scheme, like that one of the Alderney Renewable Energy Scheme, which is about 2 billion or more. Look on the back of my manifesto, you'll see one of the tidal units there. I believe that we should separate the role of Planning and Environment Minister into 2 separate roles. I believe the Environment Minister should have more teeth and more resources behind them so that they can counteract some of the dreadful forces of planning. After all, if we had a planning minister, we probably would not have had that gunge, that Alva-Lactuca green stuff in the St. Albans Bay. And Clement would not have been such a disaster. And many housing projects might not have happened in the countryside. I am one of the founding members of an organisation called the Optimum Population Trust, which is now Population Matters, of which Sir David Attenborough is one of its main patrons. When I was born, the population was 2 billion. Now it's 7 billion. There's an 80% chance that by the year 2100, it's going to be 12 billion, ladies and gentlemen. That's 6 times what it was when I was born. I believe that we in Jersey also bear some bearing on this. We are overpopulated and we must use our population policies cleverly and to our advantage. I.e., if we're going to have nurses, we make a nursing home that we can import nurses and put them in those nursing homes. If we have teachers, we have to build those extra housings for the teachers so they won't necessarily stay here but go back to their homes after their 4 or 5 years. I believe that I have some of the major attributes you will need as a senator in order to push ourselves forward. I'm an affable person, speak French, understand many things in finance. I hope you will vote for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mrs. Anne Southern.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been a teacher for 38 years and represented teachers as president of the Jersey Teachers Association for 8 years. Whilst my children were small, and before I started teaching at Holier, I did supply teaching, and I've taught in every school in this parish, so I thought one of my topics tonight should be education. We have some wonderful teachers and schools in Jersey, with better results overall than in the UK. But I would like to highlight 2 problems that cause teachers to become stressed so that many leave the profession. In Finland, which has one of the most successful education systems in Europe, class sizes are small and teachers are well respected, and they're trusted to do the job without the need for constant target setting, assessment and observations. These produce an excessive workload that gets in the way of teachers' creativity and their ability to pass on a love of learning. The welfare of teachers has a direct impact on the welfare of students. Another problem causing stress for teachers is the inclusion policy, whereby pupils who have challenging behaviour are now in mainstream schools. This is good in the sense that these pupils don't feel marginalised and are less likely to turn to crime, but the consequences of dealing with these social problems fall on teachers, as the provision made for often disturbed students is patchy and their behaviour disrupts the learning of others. Those who can afford to remove their children to the colleges where they can learn without disruption. More trained specialist teachers, vocational schemes and apprenticeships are needed to give disaffected students aspirations and a hope of success. Teachers understand the problems and how to deal with them, so should have been consulted when the inclusion policy was developed. The Haven at St Saviour's School is a model of a good provision for autistic children, and there should be more provisions like this, especially in our 11 to 16 schools. I was disturbed to hear the outgoing Education Minister say in the budget debate that there's inadequate funding for frontline education services. To underfund education is a false economy, as by investing in our children's education, we're investing in our future. We urgently need to examine the wider social reasons for pupils' challenging behaviour. The new Director of Education was right to pinpoint the problems caused by pupils who may be feeling too stressed, insecure and inadequately nourished to focus on their learning. These students may have parents that are having to work in several low-paid jobs to make ends meet, or parents who might feel great insecurity because they have 0 hours jobs. Reform Jersey has policies to combat these problems. We want to promote a fairer society where everyone can aspire to a good education and a decent life. With the help of my colleagues, I can make a difference. So please consider me for one of your votes.
I invite Mr. Chris McGee to address us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris McGee. I'm 25 years old. I have an LLB with honours from the University of Edinburgh, and I've lived in Jersey for half my life. For some of you, my age is encouraging. For others, concerning. Some of you may think that I'm too young to even be here as a candidate for senator. I won't lie to you. That's exactly why I'm here. Nobody can deny that the youth are underrepresented in the State's Chamber. It's well known that young people on the island do not engage in politics as much as other demographics. Why is this? Well, I've been speaking to them, and a lot of them say, these politicians don't represent us, so they don't vote. So the politicians don't represent us, don't represent them, continuing the vicious cycle. But the times they are changing. I'm encouraged to hear that there are over 63,000 islanders who have registered to vote already, with more looking to do so. Are they rushing out to register because they just can't wait for more of the same? Or are they fed up with the same old song and dance? Time will tell. What I do know is that if you're not happy with what you've been getting, the surest way to change that is not to vote for a current States member. I'm not here to tell you what to do, nor is that why I'm standing for senator. I'm standing in order to make a positive difference in people's lives and to help those in need. It's not about me, it's about the issues, and ultimately it's about you. The island, namely you, the public, is now £250 million in debt with a £95 million deficit on the books. Now is the time, ladies and gentlemen, to accept economic realities. No matter how much money is thrown at it, the war on cannabis can never be won. Every hour of police time wasted chasing down people who may or may not have a joint in their pocket is an hour that could be spent chasing after the real criminals, the rapists, the burglars, the arsonists, the thieves. Let's free up prison cells for them. Let's stop lining drug dealers' pockets with artificially inflated tax-free black market profits. With a stroke of a pen, we can ease the suffering of those on the island with medical conditions, which cannabis has proven to be a more effective and cheaper medicine than what the suffering are being currently offered. In addition to helping those in need, we can create jobs, increase tourism and boost agriculture, all whilst bringing the island out of the debt we have now been stuck in. We could provide significantly cheaper housing through the use of hempcrete in construction, which is far more environmentally friendly and sustainable than conventional methods. The cultivation of hemp in Jersey has been traditionally farmed in Jersey, referred to as a $1 billion crop, and could do wonders as an export, but as it stands, that would be illegal. Jersey is missing out on a serious opportunity in that respect. I'm a man of strong conviction, and I'm not afraid to tell the truth. All of my decisions, if elected, will be accompanied by a YouTube video explaining my reasoning to you, the people of Jersey. In this way, I'll be providing you with the maximum level of transparency and accountability, both features which during my campaigning, the Jersey political machine is lacking and people are crying out for change. You all have up to 8 votes, and having listened to what I have to say, if you agree, vote Chris McGee. Thank you very much for being here.
Our next speaker is Mr. Konrad Krasinski.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's getting late, so hopefully you haven't fallen asleep yet. All I'm asking you is 3 minutes of your attention. Quickly to the point, for those who don't know me yet, and I believe this is most of you people gathered here tonight, my name is Konrad Krasinski, and I'm both Polish and British citizen. The fact that I am new to politics gives me an opportunity to bring a fresh perspective into an old order. The reality is that many people, even those who have been living in Jersey for many years, are not fully engaging themselves in the political life of the island. It is here where we live, where we work, where we raise our children. Yet many of us still haven't really decided where the home is. This is because the minds are here, but they haven't left the heart somewhere else. It is the time to finally ask ourselves, where do we belong? Put your hearts and minds into a new home, and with passion and engagement, begin the new story. I've heard someone saying, politicians won't change anything in my life. I don't agree with this statement, but I do agree that Jersey politicians must actively engage and listen to what people say, to rebuild that trust and change the perception of politics. I believe that new people with fresh ideas will be able to understand the current issues we are facing. Politicians should seek solutions through an active engagement with ordinary people, not just before the election, as it usually happens, but during the whole term. I would wish to see the island with no division societies or groups. Only then we can live better if we accept our differences and make them work to our advantage rather than disadvantage. Let us build a legacy which will lay the foundation for a future generation. You may not know me, but if given opportunity, I will insist on reintroducing work permits for all incoming employees. We simply cannot accommodate any more people. Let's make most of what we have and give opportunity to permanent residents of this island. Tighter border control to prevent entry of criminals seeking refuge in the island. Reducing doctor fees for pensioners, people on long-term incapacity allowance and low income. For a large proportion of people working in so-called low-status jobs, £40 for a 20-minute visit is simply unaffordable and resulting in loss of health and in the long run being burden for the spending budget. Supporting development of small businesses, improving standard of living by scrapping the current rental housing qualifications, developing environmentally friendly waste-to-energy technology, creating alternative solutions providing clean, reliable electric power, saving space in local landfills and reducing pollution of Jersey shores. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that the issues I have raised tonight, along with the presented spectrum of possible solutions, will meet with a wide interest and your appreciation. Once again, thank you very much for your attention.
I now invite Senator Philip Ozick to address us.
Mr. Constable, ladies and gentlemen, more than ever, Jersey needs senators with ability, experience and commitment who can work together and have a clear vision of the future. The people that you will elect in this election need to have the courage to make decisions. Decisions that are sometimes difficult, but should always be in Jersey's long-term interests. Elected representatives who understand our position in the world and are capable of representing Jersey internationally, but also that who respect our history and our unique identity. Over the last 15 years, I've been called to make a lot of decisions in some of the most difficult departments in the States. For the last 6 years as Treasury Minister through a financial crisis, it is perhaps not surprising that I face one of the most difficult challenges of all of those seeking re-election. Just about 2 hours ago, I'm pleased that the States finally passed the 2015 budget, a budget that was designed to secure our economic recovery, to continue to cut unemployment, invest in your healthcare, lower the costs for first-time buyers, and deliver a cut in the marginal rate of tax, which benefits over 80% of taxpayers. A revolution in our pension scheme, and also that one that, yes, does balance the consolidated fund. Difficult decisions over the last 6 years, but they've enabled us, because of prudent decisions, enabled the value of your strategic reserve to go up by 50%, delivered 60 million of savings and more efficient states, a rebuilt reputation in terms of our international financial centre. As part of the Council of Ministers, I've led the investment in our digital future and significantly delivered on investment in social housing. 2 weekends ago, in preparation for coming to St Clement's, I went around the parish and I visited the Skye 2C, and I saw how well received it's been by the new residents. Working with Andrew Green, we are now going to end the unacceptable conditions that so many residents of St Clement have seen in recent years. Ladies and gentlemen, I care more than just about finance. I care about reforming healthcare, educating our youth, and if elected, I want to do more. I want to see a re-energised tourism industry, ensure that we really do deliver on the opportunities of the fibre infrastructure for our future. Ladies and gentlemen, you have a choice of some excellent candidates in this election. For my part, I hope that I have a track record of experience, ability and commitment, which will at least earn you one of your votes. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker is Senator Paul Ruccia.
Thank you, Mr. Constable. As I was driving here this evening, I saw a kayaker coming up the Slippets at Lamar, and I thought to myself, why aren't I doing that? Well, I hope this evening I'll be able to convince you that I cherish our island and that I deserve one of your votes. Our island has shared in the global economic downturn and the unusual unemployment levels. The social survey showed that 77% of islanders considered that population is a priority. However, views across our community vary widely, and from having closed door to the other extreme of the business requirements of unlimited licences. The interim population policy approved by the states seeks to balance the demands of the island. The new states will need to incorporate the views of islanders when finalising the new framework, which includes all aspects of island life. It's the environment, the economy and community. When all views have been collated, we will be in a better position to know what skills are required in our island and also what population. The control of housing and work law, which I guided through the states, is deliberately structured to adapt to meet our community aspirations. These challenging times, which require clear thinking and appropriate decision making, qualities I hope that I have shown as Assistant Chief Minister. I have undertaken and completed several significant complex projects. This year I led the debate on the charities law, which was enthusiastically welcomed by the voluntary and community sector, and I hope, if re-elected, to progress the next phase of the law. I also want to ensure that an inclusive equality strategy for people with disabilities is finalised, to progress the new mental health and capacity law, and to conclude the complex access to justice review. All these pieces of work require careful and thorough reviews of policies and law drafting, and then, importantly, implementing the recommendations. Whilst a great deal has been achieved, there is still much to do. All our island businesses need a fiscal and regulatory environment which encourages growth. It must not be forgotten that wealth generators pay the taxes to fund the services our community require. However, controlling the level of taxes must be a priority for a stable and prosperous economy. I do hope that I have shown that I have the skills, compassion and business sense to make sound decisions. If you would like me to continue to work for you, I would be pleased for you to consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
I now invite Senator Sarah Ferguson to address us.
Thank you, Monsieur Le Connétable. My personal information is on the flyers that were on your chairs, so I'm not going to go through that. And for those standing around, if you haven't got a flyer, you can either purloin one from the people sitting, or I've got a box at the door and I'll give you one on the way out. This is an extremely important election. State spending keeps rising and our income is falling. It's not all lost at the moment because we have assets to cover this. But as anyone knows, deficit spending becomes a habit. You know, ask anyone who's tried to get rid of their overdraft or a payday loan. Basically, we've got fewer people paying tax, but no new source of income for the states to balance this. Last year, we reduced the marginal rate by 1%, which has reduced states' income by about 8 million. Removal of the deemed distribution has cost us another 6 million. Not a lot in the scheme of things, but 8 million here, 6 million there, soon adds up. Basically, we've been under pressure from outside agencies regarding our internal tax systems. We've been forced to change some systems. As a result, we have now, through the rescindment of the deemed distribution, we've manufactured our own tax avoidance scheme for people living in the island, our own internal tax avoidance scheme. We need to deal with that. The external pressures are not going to go away, and we need to re-examine our tax system to put the island back on the principled path charted by Cyril the Marcon back in the 60s. Now, these aren't just my thoughts. They are the considered opinion of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, of which I am chairman, and are contained in our latest report on the budget 2015. What else have we done as a panel? The state spends some £40 million a year on grants. This information is now made public in the accounts. We brought the amendments. We increased the amount of savings required in the last CSR with an amendment in the states. Now, we're all struggling with balancing our own budgets, but at least we acknowledge what our budgets are. Currently, budgeting is still a game to the states, and if it wasn't so, why would we have so many large and elastic underspends at the end of each year? You'll hear many promises during elections. I merely ask you to ask, how much will it cost and where will the money come from? This is a very important election. Your vote is your voice. It really matters. Please use it.
Our final speaker is Senator Sir Philip Balash.
Good evening. I want to use my 3 minutes to talk about foreign affairs and why it is so important for Jersey to project a truthful and positive image of the island. I had the honour last year of being appointed as the First Minister for External Relations, although responsibility for foreign affairs is actually shared with other ministers. Constitutionally, the United Kingdom is responsible in international law for Jersey's foreign relations, but there was a governmental agreement a few years ago that Jersey and the UK had separate international identities and that we should seek to develop our own identity. We hold British passports and in most respects our national interests coincide with those of the UK. But a Jerseyman is not an Englishman or a Scot, and sometimes our interests are different. One unfortunate example was the LVCR dispute, when the UK withdrew a VAT concession from the Channel Islands, but not from the rest of Europe, causing many Jersey employees to lose their jobs and financial losses to several companies, including Jersey Post. I like to think that if the Ministry of External Relations had been in existence a few years earlier, that action by the UK government might have been headed off. The ministry certainly proved of value last year when, out of the blue, the French government placed Jersey on a blacklist of uncooperative countries. Punitive sanctions were due to come into force at the beginning of this year, and businesses with French connections and French and Jersey people with property in France would have suffered severely. A forceful diplomatic response and hard work by officials in my ministry and in the Treasury resulted in Jersey being removed from the blacklist in December 2013. Projecting a positive and truthful image abroad is part of what we do, both from Jersey and from our offices in London, Brussels and Caen. Sometimes it is linked to the aspirations of Jersey companies to do business abroad, as in China and the Middle East, and sometimes it is designed to counter mistaken prejudices about Jersey as a so-called tax haven. If we can educate political and business leaders in other places, it will be very much to Jersey's advantage. Thank you.
Well, that completes the first part of this hustings. We're fortunate to have so many candidates, but the downside of having so many candidates is it does limit the amount of time there are for questions, as we're aiming for particularly as we're aiming for a 9:30 finish. So what we have agreed, what the candidates have agreed to do, is to take 3 questions at a time. So I'll be asking the questions in a moment, and then they will have 90 seconds each to answer. A bell will go after a minute if they're still going. Okay, I hope that's clear. We have some microphones, so if I call you, the microphone will be brought to you, then you can ask your question. So could I have indications of who would like to ask a question, please? Okay. Gentleman here. If you could say your name and confirm you're a St Clement resident.
My name is Derek Bernard. I'd like to think that all the candidates have read the budget, whether they're currently states members or candidates, and they've also read the very substantial and extremely detailed report by the Scrutiny Committee. Would they please tell us their views on the budget, perhaps particularly on the very heavy capital expenditure planned over the next 7 or 8 years, and their views on the criticisms in the Scrutiny report. Thank you.
Another question, please. Gentleman here in the...
Thank you. My name is Bob Waring-Jones. I'm proud to have spent 38 years working in the public sector. Do the candidates believe we have too many public sector workers or too few?
Thank you. Somebody else like to ask the third question? Gentleman here in the grey jump. Gentleman in the grey sweater.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brian Beeson. My mother was in a nursing home over here prior to her death in 2012. And I was sitting here with her one Monday afternoon, and the doctor turned up to see her. I timed the visit 5 minutes, £71. Another doctor was back on the Wednesday to give her a blood test, £71. Is it right that doctors are ripping off the old and most vulnerable people in our society in this manner? And is anyone going to have the gumption to stand up to the charges that we're facing? Because I believe that is the answer to all the problems that we have in our health service. It starts with the doctor's charges.
Thank you. Well, those are the 3 questions, and I call on Senator Ian Gorst.
Thank you very much, Connie Tarb. 3 questions which, as we found last night, probably need half an hour each to answer them. Perhaps I'll start with the budget question. There is no doubt that the budget was difficult. During the course of this year, it became obvious that the income projections were not what was expected in the medium-term financial plan. Let's remember, this is the first time we've tried to plan for 3 years in advance. That was a good thing, but there's been a downside. Treasury then went away to double-check to make sure what was actually happening, and we've now put forward a budget which balances the consolidation fund, which is exactly what we are supposed to do. We know that scrutiny have made some criticisms and the professional advisor. Some of those will be very helpful going forward, but we have a responsibility to accept a budget and to approve a budget whereby the consolidated fund is balanced and also gets capital into the economy, because our independent economic advisors say that we should be doing that in the economy. I think that's my minute and a half.
That was 1 minute.
Sorry, that's 1 minute. Right, too few or not enough people employed in the public sector. We don't know the answer to that question. We started a reform and redesign of the public sector. Part of that is something that we called Lean, which is looking at all the processes and seeing if we can do them more effectively and more efficiently. I believe that that will mean that in due course we'll need fewer people, but they can be redeployed elsewhere. Doctors' fees...
Thank you, Senator.
Sorry.
Deputy Power.
Yeah, I've also read the scrutiny reports from corporate. Incredibly complicated in 30 seconds, what can I say? It's been very difficult for most states members to understand the state's accounts and to understand what exactly our financial position is in terms of how we deal with what looks like deficits for the next 2 to 5 years, including the next 2017, when an indicated 100 million is indicated as a deficit. On public sector workers, do we have too many or too few? I believe that we can grow services to the states, but trying to hold public service recruitment, which is a massive problem. And one of the biggest areas of growth has been in chief ministers and treasury. Other states' departments seem to be held to account. The final bit is on nursing homes. I didn't know it was £71 for 5 minutes. I'm in a privileged position myself where I don't go very often to a doctor, but I do visit them. I do visit people who are in residential homes, hospitals and nursing homes, and I can't explain why these immediate visit charges are so high. I know that some charges I'm aware of are lower, but not these ones. So in 90 seconds with 3 questions, 30 seconds per response, I've done the best I can. Thank you.
And Mr. Defay.
Well, this year's budget is basically a one-off in a rolling story of the states finding itself unable to deal with the fact that revenues are falling off, costs are going up, and this looks like a reasonable patch-up job for 1 year. But we are simply not dealing with the fact that we're not earning nearly as much money as we used to, when, if you recall, the money used to be falling out of our years. The question is, what do we do now we see the way things are going? And we're going to have to make some fairly drastic changes. I can't tell you what they're going to be in this short time, but I just hope that finally we may have learned the lessons from the past. When I first came into the States in 2002, I was concerned about the high levels of members of our public sector. It was about 6,300 then. It's over 7,000 now. I simply say this. I have no problem with anyone working in the public sector, but we are going to have to find out which are the essential jobs and which are the ones that are nice to have, because I'm afraid the time has come when nice to have is no longer possible to hang on to. As for doctor charges, well, where do we start and where do we stop? We can look at dentistry charges. They cost an absolute fortune. What about going to optometrists and so on and so forth? Now, health is important to everybody, and there's a problem we're going to have to deal with here to deal with these charges. I think, in general terms, we are reasonably doing well on that front, but there's plenty of work to do.
Dr. Cameron.
I believe there's a lot of waste in the public sector, particularly when I see in my area of health, and this is partly why I wanted to come into politics, and I think we could do a lot better. When I started over here 25 years ago, Barbara Waits ran the family nursing And when she had, in her spare time, she actually did go out and do district nurse visits. The tiers of administration and regulation have grown exponentially. And so a lot of doctors' time, for instance, is used up in form filling. This is completely unpaid. We've had to invest in new buildings, computer systems, to satisfy the governance system. And yet there's been very little investment, extra investment from the HIF fund and Social Security in recent years. You do need some accountability and to make sure the doctors are doing a good job. You can look at outcomes, but as I say, time for spent by social workers, as I say, a lot of areas we could concentrate on face-to-face patient care and be trusted to get on with our job, and I think the same's true for teachers.
Mr. Ferry.
Thank you. Okay, Derek, on the budget, putting more money into the economy is a proven way of growing the economy, particularly capital projects, because that money then filters down into the local economy. So I think that, there are so much of our infrastructure is in dire need of having money poured into it, and I think the time is right for us to do that. Bob, public sector workers, with the advent of e-government, there's no doubt that in the future that workers will need to be redeployed as our government departments stop working in silos and start working in a more joined up way. The cost of transacting a paper form through a government department is £8.41, roughly. If you put that through e-government, through electronic means, it reduces to 15p. So there will be huge economies in the future when we get our government departments to join up and to work together in a better way. Brian, the cost of doctors, yes, it's inhibitive, there's no doubt about it, but what I would like to see is free prescriptions maintained, because elderly people, people on fixed incomes, those are the people that are the most affected if we were to remove those free prescriptions. Thank you.
And Mr. Haven.
Good evening. Derek, the budget, most difficult. The budget revenues that even expected a year ago were not apparent. We have to close the gap over the next 2 years, and this is going some ways towards it. Capital spending is a necessity, one, for the economy, to put money back into it, but as has just been said, it is vital we repair infrastructure, particularly the hospital and liquid waste treatment. The criticism from scrutiny will be taken on, I'm sure, and I'm not being a standing member in the States at the moment. I think colleagues who are far more au fait with that one than I am, to be honest. The number of States workers, there is modernisation being undertaken. It's going to take the form of less people, more IT, and more efficiency. That's the only way it can go if we're going to try and cut it down. And as far as health is concerned, this is going to be part of, I think, an overall health review that is going to go from top to bottom, that will be undertaken over the next very few years, and rightly so.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you. We have to do better with the forecasting and the budgeting. I mean, it gets a D plus, maybe a C minus, but we mustn't panic, because if we look back over the last 3 to 4 years, we've actually had tens of millions more than so it's gone the other way. So if we take a view, it's not that bad, and I think we've caught it in time, so we can address it. With capital expenditure, yes, because it does help the economy, but we have to be careful that we don't import too much. We don't send 90% of our capital expenditure outside of the island to bring goods in to distribute around the economy. We've got to keep as much of our pound in the economy and recycle it as much as we can. There are probably too many public servants, and probably at the senior level. And I'm sure the restructuring and the advance of technology will do something about that in the future. But I would caution against trying to make hundreds or thousands of public sector workers unemployed, because that simply is not right, and it's also more expensive. That's why we need to grow the economy to ensure that we can redeploy them in other real careers. And finally, doctors, yes. But I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Andrew Green, who wants to be the health minister. I'm sure he's got a much better solution than I have for that. Thank you.
Senator McLean.
Yes, thank you. Derek, your question. Basically, we have to invest in a downturn. Capital expenditure, the FBP, independent economic advisors, have given advice that that's what we should do, and that's why the capital programme has been structured in the way that it has. The forecast is the issue in some respects. There was a forecast range. There's a lot of talk about the number being wrong. There was a range. The mid-range was the one that we worked to. Arguably, we should have worked in a more conservative way to the lower range, or had a contingency in place, greater contingencies to deal with the outcome. The economic situation changed, and that was the reason why there was underperformance. That happens typically in a downturn. The reason that budgets and surplus taxes generated when the economy is booming is that that is a natural cyclical turn. And Treasury, to be fair to them, have been criticised in the past for having excess. So we need to learn from the position in terms of the future, but the problem, the short term for 2015, has been solved. Bob, the question about too many public sector staff, it's about having the right people to do the right job, ensuring that value for money is absolutely essential, and the reform programme, or what I like to call modernisation, is key. We're investing £7 million in e-government. That will result in changes, but we need to reskill. And finally, doctors, income support is there for people who can't afford the doctors. We may need to make certain income support works properly, and at the moment it's costing too much money. It's grown from 74 million to 95 million since 2008. So we need to make sure there's no abuse in the system of income support, and that the right people get the benefits they need.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy Green.
My views on the budget. Yes, we were absolutely right to spend on capital projects that will reduce revenue costs. The sin, if there was a sin, was letting our infrastructure get in that state in the first place that we need to spend so much on it. £80 million alone on maintenance for housing, for example. So we are right to invest in capital projects that reduce revenue expenditure and provide much needed employment at this time. Now, health. Yes, I do want to be the next health minister, and I'm currently reading a document issued by the King's Fund, a report on Canterbury in New Zealand, which I think describes the sort of health service that we need for this island. The sort of health service that blurs the lines between hospital and community, but it's not just all hot wind and clouds. It's purposeful and it's working in New Zealand. Last thing we need is the NHS model. It's broken. Why do we try to copy it? It doesn't work. If we get the model right, then your mother would have the care that she needed at an affordable price. I can only promise to look at it and do things differently. Should the hospital be on 2 sites? Well, if you read my manifesto, the truth is I don't know the answer to that, but I give 100 days to review it and come back with the answer. I can't help your mother, sir. I'm sorry about that. But the system that we've got needs building on, needs developing.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Young.
I spoke in the States today about the budget. I said the policy of past prudence, I think, has been lost. Unrealistic forecast is deeply troubling. And I said we should see the new Treasury Minister organise an audit, an extraordinary audit of the accounts, and review the medium-term financial plan processes, which have been criticised so severely in the report. I voted against the capital provision for the hospital because we're not yet sure that that actual project will go ahead in the form that it's done. And but I did support the housing development because I think that's absolutely important, and the revenue budget because life has to go on. Those decisions will be made by the members you elect and the next states. Do the candidates? Well, yes. Well, the answer is I don't know, but I do know that there are layers of overheads and management levels, layers within the state's machinery, and we've worked in silos for decades. That, I think we cannot escape looking at that, and I believe frontline workers have to be protected in that view. No question about it. National wastage. And is it doctors? My doctor told me that their problems are that they're paying huge premises costs and they work 2 days out of a week in order to pay the landlord. And yet we don't spend enough on the primary health care. We need to switch. We spend, make it much more important and support, make sure that this sin of people not being able to afford to go to the doctors is dealt with. It's a priority for the future, that one.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bisson, for your interesting question there. I work in a bank with look after a whole lot of Indians, and one went to a doctor who had 2 addresses on his card, and he went to the wrong one and was promptly charged £180 or something like that. And he came back, and I was subjected to a spiel of inexplicable Hindi, and I agree with you absolutely. We need an ombudsman to be promoted amongst us, just to look after doctors and stop this abuse. And there is definitely an abuse here. And I think that doctors' fees should be very closely looked at, if possible, because they are greatly increasing very fast. As for too many public sector workers, obviously we have. We can hear them during recession taking on all the time. But it's a necessity sometimes. But I don't believe we should get rid of every student should have a chance of having at least one term or in the holiday and the vacation of learning how to work in one of their fields. That would be greatly helpful to them in the future. As for the budget, you've heard several very learned approaches to the budget. I'm not in the States. I don't have a chance to look at great depth at the States. But what the message that is coming across is that Scrutiny Project is doing a grand scheme to try and cut back on stipulated figures. And I think that we should definitely look at it much more closely in future, because we are overspending. We must balance our books. That's my #1 priority as an accountant. Thank you.
Mrs. Sutton.
Thank you. I don't think GPs are being overpaid. My son and daughter-in-law are doctors, and they've done at least 10 years postgraduate training, and my GP tells me his income has gone down. What I do think is that the subsidy paid, I think we've got to remove the social security cap so that the elderly and young people and eventually everybody gets free GP visits. I do think that is very important, that we need to eliminate those charges so nobody's prevented from seeing a GP. If you don't, your health problems are just exacerbated. In terms of public sector workers, I think when people are talking about the public sector, they think of faceless bureaucrats, but actually we're talking about frontline workers, we're talking about firefighters, paramedics, teachers, nurses, and we certainly don't have too many of them. I would say, having been involved in the modernisation process, there seems to be an absolute proliferation of HR people that make life really quite difficult for other workers. So I don't know about that. And I know there was recently a voluntary redundancy scheme that has left some departments short-staffed. The budget, it was budged in order to make it balance. I think I would normally favour the 1%, the reduction of 1% in the marginal rate, but I think that was just a piece of electioneering that we simply couldn't afford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGee.
Thank you. On the topic of the budget, the hand that gives is always higher than the hand that takes. And no matter what spin you put on it, debt is not sound economic policy. This is not in Jersey's best interests. Who's kidding who? Now, Bob, your question, too many public sector workers or too few? I think that there's far too much duplication of services. I think there's a lot of inefficiencies, and there's an attitude of spend first, ask questions later, which I think needs to be addressed. It shouldn't, in my view, it shouldn't be government that creates jobs. It should be the people that provide the individuals and businesses that provide goods and services in the marketplace, and those are the people that create jobs. I support the self-employed. I want to reduce the so-called contributions for the entrepreneurs who are looking to get out there and start working for themselves, but are currently hampered by needless red tape and expenses. Is it right that pensioners are being charged, in my view, astronomical rates for not a great deal? No, I think that's a travesty. I think that there is an element of bureaucracy in the health service. There is a lot of as has been talked about before, there's a lot of duplication, there's a lot of needless expenditure that we need to address. Leaner government is what we need to provide better services across the board, not just in health. We need to streamline administration through e-government. I support that also. And a vote for me is a vote for less bureaucracy and less intrusion of government into your lives when it's not necessary. Thank you.
Mr. Krasinski.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brian, as I already presented, I strongly agree with the fact that the doctor fees are simply too high and for many people simply not affordable. They are simply disadvantaging majority of people in the island, and I believe that we can reduce doctor fees, especially for pensioners, people on long-term incapacity allowance, and low income. There's a lot of taxpayers' money being wasted in all sectors throughout the island, which can be easily used to subsidize the high cost of doctor appointments. We must not forget about those people. They have earned to be cared for. Thank you.
Senator Rosa.
Thank you. Mr Bernard, I take advice from the Independent Fiscal Policy Panel, some of the best economic brains, and they have backed the budget. They've said spending more than we're taking out of the economy is absolutely the right thing to do. I inherited an infrastructure that hadn't been properly invested, an economy that was in crisis. And in 6 years, a lot's done, but there's more to do, but we have transformed a number of public services. We've invested in our infrastructure. We've made the states more efficient. And our balance sheet at the end of that 6 years, remarkably, is in a better state than when we started. And that's the right economic policy. In terms of states' employees, efficiencies always must be made. But the big issue in terms of spending is about healthcare. And Mr Bisson, you need a revolution in terms of healthcare. As Deputy Green said, that King's Fund report says it all. We need a complete reorganisation of healthcare. The wrong incentives are there. It's free for health in the secondary care, but actually you have to pay in GPs. The whole thing needs to be turned on its head, and that's what we're going to do. You need to get a much better deal in relation to primary health care to get people out of hospital and actually looked after like your mother in a nursing home. And that reform is underway. A lot done, but a lot more to do in terms of the big issue, in terms of your taxes and spending of the future is health. And we've got to work out how we're going to pay for it. But at least we're being honest and we're facing up to the challenge.
Senator Ruccia.
Thank you. Mr Bisson, I'm going to focus mainly on this health question because that's dear to my heart. The GP services need a total reform, they really do. Contracts need to be negotiated with GPs because there are some particular services they could be providing which would be on a contract basis, and they could perhaps, if they were going into a nursing home, they could be paid a set fee for dealing with people. And we also need to use nurses more effectively than we currently do. Nurses can do things that doctors have been traditionally doing. We don't need doctors to be doing injections, checking blood pressure, doing all the very basic things, and nurses could do that on a far better way. It was 6 years ago in this hall I was questioned about why did I introduce free prescription charges. I will defend that to the day I die, because I think it was the right thing to do, because I believe it was it's benefited so many people with getting access to health. We also need to support people with access to GPs. Mr Waring, your question about do we have too many public servants? I know we need some more social workers working within the health department. There is other areas of social need and education which do need more people. There may be some areas that could be retracted, but certainly it's not necessarily the question too many or too few. There is a balancing to be done and more focus on social needs.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you. Mr Waring, I'll turn it round and say, is government trying to do too much? Yes, I think we do have top-heavy management, but we also have too many layers of management, because IBM has 4 layers of management, and perhaps, you know, when you think about where you work, count how many layers there are from the top to the bottom. I think we are going to have to make ourselves more efficient and reduce the size of the public sector, but I don't think it should be the front-line people. Those are the people who actually do the work. It's all the sort of extras tucked away on top. Mr Bisson, yes, we do have to look at the whole question of the funding of healthcare. I know what it's like. I had my mother at home with Alzheimer's for 6 years, and yes, every time the doctor came, it was a whacking great bill. And I think we need to look at the whole question of funding of healthcare. I agree with Senator Ruccia, practice nurses could do more. As far as the budget goes, it didn't address the issues. You know, we're running deficits. We've got structural changes in the our main industry. We have a structural deficit. We do need to look at our whole system. I mentioned the problems in my original speech, and, you know, I stand by those. We feel very strongly that this must be dealt with.
And finally, Senator Ballard.
As the last man on the row, I don't think I'm going to say anything about the budget because I agree with Senator Joseph and Senator McLean, and I disagree with Senator Ferguson.
That's all right.
So far as the question about public sector employees are concerned, I think that's a very good and quite a difficult question. It is a fact that the number of public sector employees has grown almost every year for the last 10 years. And although I don't have the exact figures in my head, the number is 10 to 15% higher now than it was in 2005. So every responsible government has a duty to look carefully at this issue because all bureaucracies have a tendency to expand and to become bloated. The difficult task for a government is to balance the demands which the public make upon the public sector, particularly in health, as some of my colleagues have said, to balance that with the money that is available. So far as I'm concerned, I'm not in favour of raising taxes, whether income tax or GST, and therefore there is a limited pot of money which is available for the provision of public services. And that's the difficult balancing act which has to be done. I think it's difficult to comment on the doctor's bill. I have great sympathy.
Thank you, Senator. Right, I think there'll be time for one more set of questions. So does anybody like to ask a question? Okay. Gentleman here.
Good evening. I'm Matthew Dransfield. I'd like to say that whilst I think it's probably more important than ever that the public engages in this run-up to the elections and takes an interest in politics, it's worth saying that I don't know of anyone who isn't baffled by the fact that the states voted out the results of a referendum in the not-too-distant past. I'd like to know what you think about this and what your interpretation is of the public view. Thank you.
Did I see any other hands? Gentleman here on the end.
Hello, my name's Victor Smith. I'd like to ask about Fort Regent. We had a blank card down at the waterfront to do something and we didn't do a very good job. I think we should look at Fort Regent for tourism and sport, and I think we need a 50-metre pool. And I just want to know which people up there agree with me.
Well, ladies have not been putting up their hands. Sorry, gentlemen,
Trevor Isham, Pontac. I'd just like to hear your views on how you would defend the positioning of our new police station, and what would you do when you're in the States to either defend it or go against it? Thank you.
Thank you. On this occasion, I think we'll start with Deputy Young.
Thank you. Well, the easiest one is I can't defend the position on the State's police station at Green Street. I was a strong critic of it. I believe it was a planning mistake, but I'm afraid it's a reality now. We've spent the money, I don't know how many millions, in planning that project. I feel particularly upset for the people around that area who are going to have that development imposed on them. As I understand it, there are all sorts of constructional issues of cost and so on. So I think we won't be looking back on that project again. But nonetheless, it's gone now, the decision's made. Fort Regent, this is marvellous. We've got a great opportunity here. I certainly, when my children were young, we spent every day up there practically. They loved the place. And there is an opportunity, what we've neglected, Tourism, sports, yes. On this 50-metre pool, I used to be involved heavily with the swimming club, and I know that this is certainly essential for competition, international, but I think it's important also we have local use as well. And so to have a 50-metre pool that can be split up or used into sections for 25-metre pool and so on, I think is the sort of thing that we ought to look at. But tourism, absolutely yes. Sports is there. I've got reservations about giving the pool site to the hotel, actually. I quite prefer the idea of having the prime site for the sports facilities, and I think tourism, yes, but I think there's plenty of other opportunities there. On the question of the state's referendum, suffice to say, I was one of those members who voted against it. I was completely baffled by the whole referendum. I thought the options were totally unclear, and I really didn't think there was a mandate to go ahead.
Mr. Richardson.
I agree there was a baffling thing about the referendum, but I do believe it's a yes, no, or no, yes. In my case, I believe that we should separate the states, the constables from the states, but they will have their own assembly and report that way. From the point of view of a pool in the Fort Regent, I think that's a great idea. I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for my daughter every day for about 3 years until she got the 50-metre record, and I'm really in favour of all the swimming clubs here, which do a tremendous job for sports, and it's incredible what they do, and I can really see that bringing in tourism into Jersey. I'm very much for that. As for the police station, I think, yes, we've got to think very closely at it. I think also what we haven't thought about is the future fraud that's taking place, internet fraud, and we've got to very much invest into the services that will counteract this fraud, especially in the finance industry where it's widespread. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sutton.
Thank you. I think in terms of the police station, yes, it's a crazy place to put it, right where all the traffic's coming through the tunnel, but I don't know that there's an awful lot that we can do about it now. A 50-metre pool would be very nice to have. I don't know whether we can afford it. I know Jersey punches well above its weight in terms of competitive swimming, and you do need a 50-metre pool to hold international events. So it would be a very nice thing to have. But what I think is more important is that we have a wet weather facility for tourists. The aqua splash gets very, very crowded when it's a wet day. Tourists who come to the Merton Hotel really enjoy the facility they have there, and I think we ought to have a water park, a leisure pool that more people can enjoy when they come on holiday, or indeed for locals. The referendum, yes, I understand that there's a lot of anger out there because the results of the referendum weren't taken seriously, but I think the referendum was flawed. Various states members tried to improve the questions before it actually went out, but they were ruled out of order because the information about the referendum had already gone to the public before the states members could amend it. So it was a bit of a budge. I hope the next one is clearer. It's a simple yes-no answer, although I do think it's slightly biased because it just says, should the constables be in the States? Yes, no. In fact, it's about the constable's automatic right to be in the States.
Mr. McGee.
Thank you. On the topic of Fort Regent, it's not about what I want, it's about what the people want, and the vast majority of the people I've spoken to do want to see the 50-metre swimming pool back up there. I think it'll be great for young kids and for people who, like myself, grew up getting up early and going swimming. I think it can do a lot for young islanders. As to the referendum, what a shambles, what an absolute shambles. You were asked, what would you like? You told them, and they ignored you. Simple as that. I think that's also prevalent in the placement of the police station. The public sentiment is that it was a total mistake. I myself had nothing to do with that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of we'll create the illusion that we're interested in what you have to say, but we've got our own agenda, so we'll push it in anyway. I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment, and I think that if you want to clear house, as I said before, don't vote for a current states member. Thank you.
Mr. Krasinski.
Ladies and gentlemen, I strongly support the idea that Fort Regent should be rejuvenated and utilised as a sports centre for youth, and not only. It is a shame that such a magnificent facility has been abandoned and wasted for so long. we can improve the access to Fort Regent, especially from the area of Snow Hill, and engage the Jersey youth who right now waste their time unproductively on the street of St Helier, causing grief and upset to many citizens. Thank you.
Senator Roseworth.
Thank you, sir. I supported the referendum result. There are real issues in relation to the way that we elect deputies. It's unfair, it's not right that some people in the island have one vote and others have four, and the distribution of seats is simply not fair, particularly for the urban parishes. My role as a States member, I believe, is being proactive in actually delivering. And I inherited a load of property of which Fort Regent stands as a monument for everything that is wrong in the management of state's property. JCG Le Sailor. My Assistant Minister and I, Eddie Knowles, said that we're going to tackle and we're going to solve Fort Regent. And we're delivering on that by having published last week a really exciting plan which we want to know what you think about. And following that, by the end of the year, there will be a business plan which will actually have a bid in the next medium-term financial plan to deliver some of the infrastructure that will be required. I was up at Fort Regent this morning. We've had the long-term unemployed back to work. The gardens are looking better, and it's going to work. The police station, another problem. That had been an unsolved problem for 20 years. I inherited that problem, and I inherited a crazy situation of a dual-site police station with police officers going to be running for the next 30 years in two sites. The police chief is happy with the proposal, and I think it'll work, and it's a solution. Getting things done is what you want us to do, and I believe it will work. Thank you.
Senator Riccio.
Thank you, Mr. Constable. I probably live nearest to where the police station is going to be, and I also live probably nearest to another eyesore in our parish, is the energy from waste plant. But there are, the issue is, as a politician, there are times when you have to make decisions which are for the benefit of the whole of the community, and I voted for both of those things. There are times when you have to make these tough decisions, and which I stand by them. With regard to Fort Regent, it's a real opportunity. We mustn't miss this opportunity to improve Fort Regent. The issue about a 50-metre pool, I've asked questions about that, and I know Senator Farman is really pushing for it as well, but the answer I'm getting is that the three pools that are going to be proposed there, which is the 25-metre pool, the hydrotherapy pool, and the teaching pool, will meet the needs of the community. It won't meet the competition needs, but it will meet the needs of the community, which I fully support. We mustn't miss this opportunity. And I have to say, I was so disappointed that the states rejected the referendum result, because the public had decided what they wanted. It may not have been perhaps the ideal choice, but the public had decided, and we should not have ignored it.
Senator Ferguson.
Thank you. The referendum, well, I voted for option C, actually. I voted against the original wording. The whole thing was totally complicated. The result wasn't conclusive. And I really had no understanding of how we got to the number 42. I thought it was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. For Regent, I remember when Rupert Bear got drunk and fell off the stage. That dates us, doesn't it? Yes, I'm all for getting it back into life and more facilities. I query whether we should be having a connection at Snow Hill when we're actually trying to develop the site round the Esplanade development. And I query the hotel using the gym facilities of Fort Regent when the gym's right at the other end of Fort Regent from the hotel. But these are small things. I think we can deal with those. The police station, how much is it going to cost? I don't know. I don't understand the fixation of admin and the operations in one building. In this age, there is more resilience if you've got two centres, admin in one, operational in the other. If there's an explosion or anything like that, you've got an operational centre to work from. So, you know, I've voted against the police station being there every time, but I would prefer to see it on Summerland, next door to the fire and the ambulance, which is where it should be.
Senator Balash.
I too am baffled by the refusal of some members of the states to implement the result of the referendum. In fact, When, as a member of the Commission, I went around to the parishes and one or two people said to me, you know, the members will never implement any decision that we make because they will always vote in their own interests. I said, I just don't believe that. That's not true. And unfortunately, I was wrong. And the decision to ignore the result of the referendum was scandalous. And it undermined many people's confidence in the whole political process. Some excuses have been given, and we've heard some of them on the platform this evening. The referendum questions were not baffling, I don't think. And if any person on the platform thinks they were baffling, I wonder whether they should be on the platform at all. Some said that the margin of decision was too low at 55 to 45% in favour of option B over option A. But actually there was a referendum not long ago in Scotland where the result was 55 to 45, and the Prime Minister announced that that was a very clear decision in favour of the Union. So I think it was a lamentable decision, and it's one of the reasons why I am standing for election, because I am determined that we will have a more sensible system in place in 4 years' time.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ghost.
Thank you. I'll try and manage the three this time. The police station, of course, that was a decision that, as the Treasury Minister says, has been long outstanding for over 20 years. They'd looked at virtually every site you can think of in St Helier, and none of them were suitable for various reasons. That site does work. It's not ideal. We all know that. But actually, we need a new police station. And I think Treasury should be congratulated for starting to deliver on those priorities. Fort Regent is probably one of the most exciting projects that St Helier has seen for many decades. Should there be a pool of 50 metres up there? Well, they've worked on that, they've looked at it, it looks difficult. Should there be a 50-metre pool in St Helier? The answer to that is probably yes. Whether it should be there or not is another issue. But the project at Fort Regent is absolutely fantastic, it's exciting, it's going to modernise it, and it's going to become a destination in its own right. The referendum decision was terrible. I have no idea how we managed to get to the point where the States Assembly rejected the will of the public. And we have to learn from that, and we must make sure it never happens again. Doctors' fees, you're absolutely right, they're too expensive, and we're I don't, but I've still got 30 seconds. We are transforming the way that we work with doctors, and there's a group of doctors and the states working together to modernise primary care delivery, and that will hopefully deal with some of the costs involved as well. Thank you.
The police station is in the wrong place. The proposed police station is in the wrong place. It should have been kept at Rouge Bouillon. That's what John Lafondre said. That's what I agree with Senator Ferguson. I think Treasury made a mistake. On the question of Fort Regent, we now have a proposal for a 25-metre pool, which is smaller than the original pool. I think it needs to be a 50 to 55-metre pool, one that can be split so that people can use two sides of it, or they can train for Olympic and after the Olympic Games and after the Commonwealth Games. We should have two centres of sporting excellence in Jersey. I think one can be swimming at Fort Regent, and I think the second one should be international shooting centre at Crabbe. That's my view. Finally, the referendum. What a complete cock-up that was. I again, with Ian Gorst and Philip Balash and Philip Oza, I supported, my written submission was 30 senators and 12 constables. That was rejected. I then worked with everyone for those on option B. 86% of people that voted, 26% voted, supported option A and option B, and my colleagues rejected it. I'm still angry about it, and I hope that Senator Balash does do something about it in the next Assembly if he's elected, and I would like to do something about it if I'm elected. So thank you.
Mr. Dufay.
The referendum was always going to be an opinion poll, and in my personal opinion, the States of Jersey should have been brave enough to turn around and say, thank you for your work, Electoral Commission, but we're not going to proceed with this any further. As far as Fort Regent goes, can Phase 1 please be access to Fort Regent? It's been the problem since it started. Maybe we can kick off with a multi-storey car park in Snow Hill Cut and some lifts and escalators to get people from Snow Hill to the ramparts in 2 minutes. There we can start deciding what we can do with the Fort Regent. At the far end, please get rid of the swimming pool. I'd love to see a deluxe 5-star hotel there with a rooftop bar and restaurant open to the public. And in terms of the pool, can we make up our mind? Are we going to hold the Olympics here, international swimming or national swimming competitions, or just have it for whoever fancies swimming lessons? As long as you sort that out, fine. Now, what is the matter with the States about building on car parks? We had Gas Place car park earning £250,000 a year. We stuck the Millennium Town Park on it, now costing us £70,000 a year, probably in maintenance. That means that park is costing us minus £400,000 a year in perpetuity. And we did the same thing down at Green Street. 100 car parking spaces gone, £100,000 a year income out, police station, ongoing maintenance. And the gap there would have been quite useful. Put a 5-storey extension so we could have 500 car parking spaces at Green Street, earning £500,000 a year. What has gone wrong? Answer, these states' members.
Thank you, Mr. Saber. Dr. Cameron.
With regard to the positioning of the police station, it's not ideal, but then where is? And at least with the release of the summer site, you're going to be able to start to pay for the police station with eventually getting social housing. As far as the reform goes, I think the questions were difficult, and the low turnout reflected that. Personally, I feel the parish has lasted us and served us well for centuries, and to lose that identity was quite a risk. I think the island-wide mandate for senators is if you want to go for ministry, then that's a good post. So I would opt for a constable. It's wrong at the moment with some deputies representing more of the electorate than others. I think each parish could have the number of deputies reflecting the size. With regard to Fort Regent, it's an exciting development. A 50-metre pool would obviously be ideal, but it may not be feasible. Thank you.
Mr. Ferry.
Thank you. Okay, in relation to the referendum, for members to object to the outcome of the referendum just showed disdain for everyone who bothered to go out and put their cross in their box that day. In relation to Fort Regent, let's return it to its former glory. There has to be a 50-metre pool there because then it's suitable for both leisure and for competition. But let's see all sorts of other services up there as well. It used to be a great place for children to go, particularly in the winter. They were safe, they were all in one place, and everyone used to have a great time there. I'm sure everyone in this room at some stage can remember going up there and enjoying themselves. In relation to the police station, having spent time as a centeneer 15 years ago, it was dilapidated then. So while we deliberate, it's another example of our frontline services being inadequately housed and having to work in an ancient building, which is old facilities. How can you expect people who work shifts on frontline services doing a very difficult job to be able to do that job without proper, modern, safe facilities? The longer we leave these things, the longer we leave the decisions go, the harder it is for people who are just trying to do a decent job to get by.
And Mr. Haben.
The referendum. Yes, what a complete lash-up that was. The Assembly completely ignored the wishes of the people, citing not enough of a turnout. Well, I'm sorry, that was wrong, and it has driven a schism between the electorate and the Assembly, and it's going to take a long time to repair that. Fort Regent, marvellous to see something happening with it, irrespective of whether we have a 50-metre or smaller pool. It is just nice to see that we're going to be doing something with it. I just rather hope it's more successful than last time we proposed something similar, which is about 10 years ago, as I recall. And the police station, well, I've got to take issue with Deputy Routier. I'm across the road from it. I'm a lot closer.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you. I do not think the police station is in the right place, but we are where we are. And if I can get one grain of comfort from it, as Assistant Minister at Home Affairs, working with the police, they are going to have the facility that they need. And by Jove, do they need a new facility So we have to make the best of it, I'm afraid. I'm sorry I did not support the result of the referendum because I simply could not vote for the removal of senators without the people of Jersey being asked first, and I stand by that. I continue to stand by that. I don't think the question was baffling. What I do think is baffling is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members who voted to remove the senators were on this platform standing for it tonight. In fact, one of them said to me, shall remain nameless, the office of senator is dead in the water, and they're right here standing for it. Why aren't they standing for deputies, where a third of them have been put into the states without an election? Sorry. Now, the swimming pool. I like the idea of the swimming pool because it's something the whole community can use. And we hear, stories that we're not big enough, we haven't got enough people, but it's going to be our 5th 25-metre pool. That's 125 metres of swimming pools in 5 different locations. Let's have one 50-metre pool, maybe a couple of 25-metre pools. Let's do it properly. Thank you.
Senator McLean.
Thank you. I was feeling for my life then as the Senator got very carried away swinging his arms around. I thought I was going to be knocked out. Ladies and gentlemen, we asked you at the referendum for your opinion on the subject, the future reform. You gave us your opinion and we ignored it. That really wasn't a very good start, and what I really hope is it doesn't stop you going out to vote. I hope you haven't lost faith. I certainly found that the 3 choices, of the 3 I voted for C. I preferred D. It didn't exist. When it came to the choice in the States, you'd given an opinion, so I went for the choice that you'd gone for, and I voted for the change. Sadly, it wasn't to be the case. We've tried so many times to reform, and it really is going to come down, in my opinion, to an external body that's going to have to look at this, because we clearly can't do it ourselves. As far as the swimming pool is concerned, up at Fort Regent, first of all, Fort Regent is a fantastic facility. I'm delighted there's a plan. It needs to have a business plan. It's a large wish list in many respects. It needs to find funding, and I think that, frankly, is going to be the tricky bit. Indoor facilities we do need. I'm delighted TDF supported the Amazing Maze. They're putting a lot of money into developing that indoor facility. Fort Regent, a great community facility that could be developed, and I hope it does get the funding that it deserves for our tourism industry that I'm keen to rejuvenate, which is why we're investing so much money in it. Probably more money than anything else that the Economic Development Department does goes into supporting tourism because of the effect on the community and small businesses. The police station, I was disappointed with the location, but we are where we are. Unfortunately, it's now been decided upon and it has to move ahead.
Deputy Green.
Thank you. I was one of 7 that voted against the referendum even going out, because to my mind it was more like who wants to be a millionaire. Referendum are not about multi-choice questions. Referendum are like the ones in Scotland, yes or no. And that's why Scotland turned out very clearly in such big numbers to say yes or no. I brought the question that you're going to hopefully turn up and answer this time, because I believe that people went for option B, because actually it wasn't the choice they really wanted, but they did want to keep the constables in the States. And we've never actually asked that question. And we're going to ask that question this time, and I hope you turn out and give us your reply to that. It's yes or no, that's nice and clear. Probably the next one should be about senators, and then we've got a plan to move forward. Right, Fort Regent. Well, yes, it does need developing, but it's not a complete disaster now. There's lots of people get a lot of pleasure out of it now, but we do need to do a lot of work up there. We need to improve the access. Do we need a 50-metre pool? I'm not sure. I'd need to ask the swimming clubs about that. What about a water park up there, some real wet and wild type thing? If you've got the access from Snow Hill, you've got access to what I call Town Park 2. Have you seen how many acres of gardens there are there? And you could be in Town Park 2 in a few seconds from Snow Hill. So it's right to develop it. I think we need to make sure that we put the right things in there.
Thank you. Well, I very much regret that there's no time for further questions. It is most unfortunate. But if you visit the vote.je website, you will see that all the candidates have their telephone numbers and emails on there if you have any further questions. Can I thank a few people? Can I thank all the parish hall staff for organising this evening, manning the microphone?